As the U.S. ambassador to the country of Georgia between 2015 and 2018, Ian Kelly had some experience dealing with one of Georgia's neighbors, Russia, certainly in the news lately for its full-scale invasion it launched on its neighbor, Ukraine, back in 2022. I'm getting Kelly's perspective on how the Kremlin approaches deal-making. We've noticed in recent days that President Trump has been growing impatient with Vladimir Putin over how long it's taken to reach a deal. And so is it something that surprises you, or is it something that was bound to happen?
I think that, most people didn't take very seriously his campaign promise to end the war in a day. I mean, we knew that wasn't going to happen, and the essential problem is that Putin thinks he can gain more militarily than he can gain by negotiating. And he has kind of staked his political future on establishing at least some kind of hegemony over Kyiv. And the important thing is ensuring that it does not join what Moscow perceives as an anti-Russian alliance, NATO. Russia isn't even that thrilled about former Soviet states joining the European Union. But for them, the red line is NATO. And the conundrum is that it's impossible for Ukrainians to see how they could live in peace with their neighbor, at least as long as Putin is the leader of Russia, unless they have some kind of security guarantees to deter future aggression with from Russia. And that's why they wanted to join NATO, but if they couldn't join NATO, they would like to have some kind of
security guarantee,
legally binding deterrence of some way, of some sort. So that's why it's almost impossible to square the circle. Because Russia's main demand is the West should keep out of Ukraine. Because he wants to dominate it.
And I just wonder what you make of the fact that, of course, Western leaders, they would like to see de-escalation in this situation. Would you say Russia has benefited from that, from just the idea of we don't want to have an intense confrontation over this, that they've just kind of run out the clock?
Well, yeah, run out the clock is a good way to put it, because I think Putin is counting on Ukraine fatigue in the West. And we definitely have it here in the United States. Especially after the, I shouldn't say after the election, but over the last year and a half or so, kind of culminating in this new approach that the present administration has. I think that one thing that he hasn't really, assessed well is the staying power of Europe. And that's partially because of our president. Because they see that they are facing now a new reality, where the U.S. has said, Europe, if it's in Europe, it's your problem, it's not our problem. And so you see Europe taking Russia a lot more seriously. They can't necessarily depend on the U.S. to take charge and be their defender of the last resort. They're not even sure that the U.S. would come to their defense under Trump. Putin, I think, has calculated that, as you say, he can run out the clock. Eventually, that even Europe will get tired, and Ukraine will fall into his hands like a ripe fruit or something.
And you even mentioned that Putin views the NATO alliance as something that's hostile toward Russia. Yeah. But we've seen following the invasion that countries that were formerly neutral and non-aligned, such as Finland and Sweden, have joined.
Exactly. I know.
That actually run the risk of escalating tensions?
Having Finland and Sweden join?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. It's been really interesting to me how restrained the reaction of the Kremlin was to the news that they've now got this, now had their border with NATO as more than doubled, with the long border with Finland, which I think really, sort of gives lie to this argument that the main concern of Russia is Ukraine joining NATO. If that were the case, then they would be massing troops on the border of Finland too, before they joined, and it didn't happen. Yeah, I mean, I am of the school that in order to really stop Putin, you have to have a credible threat of costs. I mean, he doesn't think our threats or Trump's threats are credible. But I mean, NATO is obviously, he's obviously afraid of NATO. I mean, he has gone after the countries that are not under the NATO umbrella. So he's gone after Ukraine, he's gone after Georgia, he's gone after Moldova. So, I mean, all those countries have some kind of occupation by Russian forces. There's no occupation of the Baltic states, the three, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, because they're under the protection of NATO. He doesn't bother them.
And
I mean, he bothers them diplomatically, but not militarily.
Words alone can be very influential. And I kind of want to bring up this example from Tuesday, because President Trump had said, basically, if it weren't for him, that really bad things would have already happened to Russia. That was something he said in a social media post, but Russia Security Council deputy chairman responded to that. And he said, quote, "I only know of one really bad thing, World War III. There's just a lot to break down there.
There's a great example, Jaden.
Yeah.
That's a great example of getting into our heads.
Yeah.
It's, that threat of World War III and the implication that it would be nuclear has been very effective in our decision making and in Europe's decision making, not wanting to escalate to the point where it starts World War III.
Right.
So we have put, real limits on what we provide Ukraine in terms of, especially in terms of range of weapons. It was effective with the Biden administration, and it was effective with Germany.
Yeah, and we just saw recently that Germany has lifted their limit on.
Yes, so there's a new chancellor. Yeah, I mean, they have this very effective cruise missile called the Taurus, which has a pretty long range. And then his predecessor, Schultz, right? We're not going to provide that because they were afraid of escalation. And Merz said, we're going to provide it, and we're going to be putting no limitations. So, I mean, that is a great example of, getting into our heads.
Thanks to Ambassador Kelly for taking the time to chat. He currently serves as an ambassador in residence at Northwestern University.